Hi, I'm Ludig Ryan. This week I'd like to talk about Subsurface Circular and how it constructs one of the most complex moral choices in games. This is an inherently more personal video that focuses on my own play and struggles with the choice at the end of the game, as each individual approach to a moral choice is loaded with the idiosyncrasies and personality of that person. Because of this, the video will focus on the pursuit of a moral good that I try to find in Subsurface Circular's choice, and the complications that arise from this. If you haven't already guessed, this video contains spoilers of the most major variety, so go play the game first if you don't want it to be spoiled. It takes about 2 hours and is well worth the small asking price. Subsurface Circular is a text adventure by Bithell Games and exists in the same narrative universe as their previous games Thomas Was Alone and Volume. It is set on an underground train carriage utilised by AI robots called techs. The player character is a detective and is tasked with solving the disappearance of one tech's friend. The player character will then engage with other passengers on the train about their knowledge of tech disturbances, human unrest, and other contemporary issues within this world. This mystery is further complicated by the conversations the player character has with other techs, but the player also gains an insight into their lives and roles in this world. The game has 7 chapters which provide the player with a certain roster of techs through which they must gain information necessary to advance their understanding of this mystery. As has been mentioned in the last video concerning Hellblade, narratives placed in fantastical settings allow us to view the human condition through a lens that might shed light on our own fundamental characteristics. The same is true with science fiction, where moral quandaries can be placed in a different framework that might illuminate another side. Star Trek The Next Generation engages with issues on AI in regards to the character data in a way which questions our own moral positions towards existence, the rights of non-human entities, and labour laws regarding the working conditions of AI. Good sci-fi makes us question our own internal moral compass, and like Star Trek and the stories on robots by Isaac Asimov, Subsurface Circular engages with these similar questions on the rights of AI. The moral choice presented at the end of the game by the red tech is a binary one. The player finds out that the disappearance of the tech was a lie in their first conversation and was used to enroll the help of the player character in making the final choice. The player finds out that the rumoured disappearance of techs was true in that an army of techs has been formed and is waiting outside of the capital city to stage a revolution of the current human leadership. The player must choose whether to stop the revolution or let it continue. Before we get into the nuances of the moral choice itself, I want to provide a quick framework for how I sort through moral decisions on the most basic level. I divide between the categorical and the consequential moral reasoning. The former considers the morality of the act in and of itself, whilst the latter considers the morality of the possible and likely consequences of the act. Categorical moral reasoning might result in telling a potentially unpleasant truth because the act of honesty is inherently good. Consequential moral reasoning might result in lying to someone so that their feelings may be spared. These considerations are obviously more complicated, and there are many grey areas based on the context of the situation, but I personally hesitate towards the categorical because the future cannot always be guaranteed, and it is best to find a way to make sure the action is as positive in and of itself as possible. The consequential moral consideration will also help frame this act, but I consider the categorical first. It is because Subsurface Circular blends these moral imperatives that I find its final choice so complex. To make the choice, the player character is presented with a gun. To halt the revolution, the player must choose to take the life of the red tech, who will lead the army into the capital city. To let the revolution begin, the player character must turn the gun on themselves and take their own life, which will stop information of this coup from being intercepted by the human government. This is the categorical consideration presented to the player, but it is layered with myriad consequential considerations. The player character is told by the red tech that if they choose to halt the revolution, the status quo will remain. That is, techs will be used as the workforce of the human populace, doing the jobs they don't want. They are used functionally by the humans and replaced as and when needed regardless of their preference or autonomy. In addition to this, the human working class will steadily lose their own jobs, becoming redundant in the face of the better optimized robotic workforce. On the other hand, the red tech outlines that if the player character allows the revolution to begin, then the human government in control will be overthrown by force and their lives forfeit. The techs will assume the governmental positions since they are naturally predisposed to organise and categorise the lives of humans. This means, however, that the lives of the techs carrying out the working class jobs will become redundant. When the consequences of these actions are suggested with the same certainty that governs the feedback loop for a game system, it is difficult not to consider them a probability. It then becomes necessary to consider both the consequences and the action itself. This final choice of Subsurface Circular sticks you in a temporal loop of questioning the morality of the situation. We're first confronted with the present tense categorical problem. Do we end the life of another or take our own? Before we can even untangle this decision, we are presented with the immediate consequences of these actions, of potential revolution and the lives lost because of it. These consequences also make us consider the past and our time on the train interacting with the regular techs going about their jobs. It forces us to question to what degree we value their livelihoods and to figure out what's best for them. It challenges the empathy we have built up for the techs and asks us to find a solution where there is no optimal answer. In trying to go towards a morally good path, I thought about the consequences. If we spark the revolution by taking our own life, many lives could be lost. If we do not, the slavery of the techs continues. If we spark the revolution, the slavery of the techs ends, but the majority of them become redundant and serve no further purpose. Subsurface Circular places the player in a position where the autonomy of the tech is never considered, only their optimal functionality. The complexity arises in that the consequences override any default to a categorical consideration. They are presented as immediate and inevitable. This, however, led into a consideration of metagaming, of exploring intertextual examples of moral choices in games from Mass Effect to Life is Strange. Did these games present their consequences as inevitable and thus follow through with the feedback loop confirming the choice? By metagaming and considering other game examples, it could have provided an insight into the likelihood of the proposed consequences manifesting. However, at this point, I forced myself to reject metagaming, and further to reject the consequential consideration. By placing myself in this situation, the player character in Subsurface Circular followed a categorical moral imperative. The future is not guaranteed, so follow through with the action which is inherently good in this context. So in my playthrough of Subsurface Circular, after 15 minutes of considering the choice, I chose to end the life of the player character and spark the revolution, living in hope that any change would not come about through further loss of life or the redundancy of either forms of the working class. There are many ways to consider this moral choice, but I decided to show the complexity through the lens of how I play and how that has created its own narrative in this game. My approach to moral quandaries is an expression of who I am and a reflection of my idiosyncrasies. The Telltale Walking Dead series is exemplary for drawing out these personal approaches to the subject matter of games, and so too is Subsurface Circular. Thank you so much for watching. If you'd like to watch last week's video on Hellblade and Myth, then click on the annotation in the video. Next week I'll be talking about identity dissonance in Sybil, so if you'd like to be notified when this video is released, then click on the subscribe button below.